Lucas Vance, a Navy veteran, was repairing an old lighthouse on the Oregon coast just before a massive storm hit. He thought it was just another quiet night until his German shepherd, Raya, started barking and clawing at the floor. When Lucas pulled up the rusted hatch, a strange metallic smell flooded the room. Down below, a red light blinked through the darkness, 3 short, 2 long. He froze. It was a distress code from his old unit, the one lost at sea 10 years ago. And tonight, in the middle of the storm, someone was sending it again. The wind on Cape Arago never really stopped it, only changed its voice. Some nights it whispered through the pines, other nights it screamed against the cliffs like the ghosts of shipwrecks clawing their way home. Lucas Vance had learned to live with it. Out here, noise was a kind of company. He had come to the lighthouse 6 months ago, when the Coast Guard sold it for a single dollar to anyone crazy enough to restore it. For Lucas, it wasn't about money, it was about silence. And tonight, in the middle of the storm, someone was sending it again. The lighthouse itself was a skeleton, its white paint flaked to gray, its glass lens cracked but still standing proud against the sea. Below, the waves smashed the basalt rocks, throwing salt spray into the air so fine it glittered like frost. The village 2 miles inland was a different world fisherman, boarded shops, and a diner that smelled of old coffee and diesel. Lucas rarely went there, except to pick up supplies. The locals called him the Keeper, half as a joke, half as a superstition. They said the lighthouse had seen too much, that during the Cold War, the Navy had run experiments along this stretch of coast. When the fog came thick enough to hide the sun, strange lights had shimmered beneath the water. He didn't believe in ghost stories, but he did believe in cover-ups. The ocean had taught him that truth didn't sink, it waited. That afternoon, before the storm arrived, he'd been repairing the lower stairs when Raya started acting strange. Her nose kept tilting toward the floorboards near the base of the beacon room, her ears twitching as if hearing something miles away. Lucas brushed it off at first. Wind did weird things in old buildings. It moaned through gaps. It hummed in the pipes. But Raya was no ordinary dog. She had been trained for detection explosives, gas leaks, even low-frequency vibrations. When she froze, Lucas always listened. He set down his wrench and crouched. "What is it, girl?" Raya's tail went rigid. She padded to the center of the room and pawed the floor once. Then again. Her growl was low and deliberate, not fear-warning. That's when he saw it. A faint outline in the metal plating, half concealed by decades of paint and corrosion. A hatch. Lucas ran his hand over it. Cold. The bolts were welded shut, edges eaten by salt. He hadn't noticed it before because the restoration plans showed nothing beneath the generator room. Probably an old maintenance crawl, he muttered. But his gut said otherwise. He tried the wrench first, no luck. Then the crowbar. With a heavy groan, the metal shifted, releasing a puff of air that smelled like wet pennies and bleach. Raya's ears pinned back. Her teeth showed. Lucas leaned closer, flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. The air rising from below wasn't the damp breath of seawater. It was sterile, chemical, wrong. He had smelled it before. Kandahar, 2011. The night his dive team pulled up barrels from a blown depot, the stench so strong it clung to their skin for days. He stepped back, heart tightening. "You've got to be kidding me." Outside, thunder rolled over the horizon. The first wave of the storm hit the cliffs, sending vibrations through the floor. Raya whined once, her gaze locked on the open hatch. Lucas knelt, shining the light inside. The beam fell across a ladder, descending into darkness, steel, rusted, dripping. 10 feet down, the flashlight caught a glint of red, not reflection. A pulse. 3 short, 2 long, then darkness again. He froze. The same distress code used by SEAL recon units, the one his team had sent before the line went dead, 10 years ago. Raya barked sharply, her chest vibrating with the sound. Lucas snapped off the light, adrenaline flooding back like old muscle memory. The radio on the table crackled with static, just once, like something testing the channel. Then silence. He looked out the narrow window. The horizon had vanished, swallowed by a wall of rain and lightning. The sea below had turned the color of iron. "Who's down there?" he whispered. Riaz's growl deepened. Lightning flashed again, and for a second, through the mist, he saw a faint reflection glimmer on the wet glass, a shape moving near the base of the cliffs, where no man could stand in that tide. The beacon above them flickered once, then died completely. Lucas exhaled, slow and steady, his breath fogging in the cold. "All right," he said. voice barely audible over the wind. "If you want to talk, I'm listening." Raya's eyes didn't leave the hatch. Her tail was still. The storm outside roared louder, drowning every other sound except one. A low metallic knock. From below. By dawn, the storm had calmed enough for Lucas to risk the path down to town. The sky was a washed-out gray, the kind that made the ocean and clouds look like one endless sheet of steel. He needed supplies, gasoline for the generator, new radio fuses, and maybe, just maybe, answers. Raya trotted ahead, paws crunching in the gravel, fur still damp from the night before. She stopped often, nose to the wind, checking scents like a sentry who never clocked out. Lucas kept a hand on the sidearm at his hip. Habit, not paranoia. In war zones, habits kept you alive. In peace, they made you look haunted. The road wound along the cliff's edge, down into the small harbor town of Port Marin. The place was more rust than color. Fishing boats sat half-drowned at the dock, their nets stiff with salt and neglect. A handful of shops lined the main street, one gas station, a diner, a hardware store that doubled as gossip central. As he entered town, heads turned. They always did. The man who lived in the lighthouse wasn't exactly local. Most people avoided eye contact, pretending to study the pavement. A few whispered. Words like Navy, crazy, ghostlight. Lucas ignored them. Inside the diner, the air was warm and smelled of coffee, bacon, and seaweed. The woman behind the counter, May, the owner, gave him the same cautious smile she always did. "Morning, keeper," she said, pouring coffee before he asked. "Storm treat you bad?" "Knocked out power, fried the radio," Lucas replied. "Need some fuses and maybe a dry night's sleep." May chuckled softly. "You and that dog never sleep, far as I can tell." Her gaze shifted to Raya, who sat near the door, alert and polite. "She's a beauty. Still on duty, huh?" "Always." Lucas sipped the coffee. "You ever hear of anyone running signals off the coast lately? Morse? Something shortwave?" The question froze May mid-step. "Signals? Not that I know of. Why?" He hesitated. "Picked up something strange last night. Might be interference from the storm." May's eyes darted toward the corner booth where two fishermen sat pretending not to listen. "Storms do funny things," she said quietly. "Bring up wrecks, voices, memories." She leaned closer. "You watch that place, keeper. My father used to say the sea doesn't forget." Before he could reply, the bell above the door jingled. A man stepped in heavy coat, deputy's badge on the breast. Sheriff Grant Avery, early 50s, face lined like old driftwood. He gave a curt nod toward Lucas. "Morning," Grant said, though it sounded more like a warning. "Heard you were up at the light during the storm." Lucas met his gaze evenly. "That's the job." Grant took off his hat, shaking rain from it. "Town's curious, that's all. Folks say they saw a flare out there. Red light near the cliffs. Probably lightning." "Lightning doesn't blink in code," the sheriff replied, eyes narrowing slightly. Lucas didn't answer. Grant's smile was thin. "Funny thing, you being Navy. We had a crew stationed there once, long time ago. Packed up overnight, no notice. Some say they were testing sonar gear. Others say it wasn't gear at all." "Ghost stories sell coffee," Lucas said, standing. "I'll take my supplies and be out of your way." The sheriff blocked his path with a casual step. "I'll make it simpler. That lighthouse belongs to the county. You're under lease, not ownership. So if something unsafe turns up, you report it. You don't dig it up." Raya rose, silent but solid, tail low, ears forward. Grant looked at her and smirked. "You should keep her leashed. Not every local's as friendly as May." Lucas held his ground. "Ria's trained to sense danger. You should listen when she growls." The sheriff studied him a moment longer, then tipped his hat. "Enjoy the peace while it lasts, keeper." He turned and left, boots echoing against the wet sidewalk. May exhaled once he was gone. "He's been sheriff 20 years, she said softly. "Knows too much about too many things." Lucas finished his coffee and set a bill on the counter. "Thanks for the warning." "Wasn't me warning you," May said. It was him. By noon, Lucas was back on the ridge, wind biting at his jacket. The lighthouse rose ahead like a white scar against the darkening sky. He carried a new fuse box under one arm and a creeping unease under his ribs. At the top of the cliff, Raya stopped suddenly. Her paw prints ended at the edge of a puddle filled with brackish water. Something shimmered beneath the surface, metallic, circular. Lucas crouched and fished it out. A brass tag, worn smooth by time. He rubbed the mud away. Tide 3. The same code etched on the hatch. Lightning flashed again over the horizon, and for an instant, the lighthouse windows glowed red, not from reflection, but from somewhere deep inside the structure. Raya pressed against his leg, trembling, eyes locked on the door. Lucas turned the tag over in his palm, the engraving faint but unmistakable, his old dive unit, the one that never came home. And now, somehow, their name had surfaced here on land they were never meant to reach. He looked toward the gray horizon where the sea blurred into sky. "If you're out there," he whispered, "I'm listening." The wind answered with a hollow moan that rolled up from the cliffs, 3 short, 2 long. The same code, again. And this time, it wasn't coming from the water. It was coming from beneath the lighthouse. The storm returned that night without warning. Rain hit the glass like thrown nails, and the wind pushed so hard against the lighthouse that the beams trembled in their bolts. Lucas had just finished replacing the fuse box when Raya started pacing again, tight circles, ears pinned, low growl rumbling like an engine under her breath. He glanced at her. Not again. She stopped by the hatch, the same one. Her body went rigid, tail low. Lucas's pulse quickened. He'd sealed it after the last time, welding a temporary brace over the seam. Yet now, in the flicker of the lamp, he saw it a thin line of water bleeding up through the crack. Salt water. Damn it. He grabbed his flashlight and crowbar, prying loose the brace. The metal gave with a shriek. As the hatch lifted, a sharp hiss escaped from below, followed by that smell again sweet, chemical, electric. Raya barked once, sharp enough to cut through the storm. Lucas aimed the light into the shaft. The water level had risen. The ladder disappeared into black reflection. But the pulse of the red beacon was still there. 3 short, 2 long. He hesitated only a moment before he reached for his dive pack. Old habits die hard. The gear wasn't regulation anymore, but it still fit like a second skin compressed air, emergency beacon, small waterproof radio clipped to the shoulder strap. "Stay here," he told Raya. She whined, pawing at the edge, refusing to move. "I mean it. Guard the exit." "Oh." Lightning flashed, and for an instant the glass lens above them blazed white. Then darkness swallowed the tower again. Lucas climbed down into the shaft. Each rung groaned under his weight. Cold water reached his boots, then his knees. The beam of the flashlight danced over corroded walls, slick with algae. He hit the bottom, boots sinking into a layer of silt. The air was dense, suffocating, heavy with ammonia and rust. A door stood ahead, round, sealed, with the same Tide 3 emblem he'd seen on the tag. He traced the outline with a gloved hand, finding the manual wheel lock frozen by corrosion. When he forced it, flakes of paint drifted like snow. The door moved an inch, then another, and the sound that escaped wasn't air. It was static. Not mechanical radio static, faint but rhythmic. Morse again, 3 short, 2 long, followed by a break, and then words warped through time. "They're still here." Lucas's breath caught. "Hello? Identify yourself." Only silence, then a hollow thud behind him. He spun, flashlight cutting through the dark. Nothing, just the ladder disappearing up into the dim circle of light above. Rainwater dripped through, tapping the surface like a clock. He turned back to the door, jaw tight. "You want me to open it? Fine. The wheel lock resisted, then snapped free with a metallic groan. Cold vapor rolled out, coating the floor in fog. Inside was a narrow tunnel reinforced with decaying steel beams. He ducked through, light sweeping over cracked warning signs. Property of U.S. Naval Research. Hazard. Toxic storage. Clearance level Omega. His pulse thundered. Omega classified even above Black Ops operations. The tunnel descended sharply, ending in a chamber half filled with standing water. At its center sat a large cylindrical vault, its surface etched with serial numbers and peeling hazard stripes. A generator sat beside it, long dead. On a table nearby, plastic containers, metal clips, and what looked like handwritten notes sealed in waterproof film. He moved closer, scanning one page. Dates, coordinates, chemical analysis. The ink blurred in places, but he could read enough. Sample retrieval, Phase 3, Port Marin test site. Crew lost during containment failure. Subject survival window, 12 hours after exposure. Containment protocol. Seal lighthouse access. Bury remaining canisters. Lucas's stomach turned. Port Marin, this town. The unit name, Tide 3. His unit's code. But they'd never done chemical containment. They were rescue divers. They'd been lied to. He looked around, light catching on a floating shape near the far corner. For a heartbeat, he thought it was debris. Then it rolled with the water human. A suit, decayed. The Navy insignia barely visible. He crouched, pulling the tag free from the shredded strap. Vance, L. His own name. He dropped it. The tag hit the water with a small splash that echoed far too long. Behind him, something moved soft, deliberate, scraping against metal. Lucas whipped the light around. A figure stood half submerged in the water still, featureless in the beam's glare. He stepped back, heart racing. The figure didn't move. Then, slowly, it tilted its head. The mask was shattered, revealing a skull half covered in gray tissue, preserved by chemicals. His reflection stared back through the cracked visor. A sound broke through his earpiece, static again, but stronger. This time, a voice, low, deliberate, male. Lucas Vance. Step away from the vault. He froze. Who is this? You opened what was sealed. You need to close it. The line cut. A moment later, the red beacon inside the vault flared to life, spinning in slow rotation. Alarms, faint but real, began to pulse through the steel. Raya barked from above, echoing down the shaft. Lucas grabbed the notebook and stuffed it into his suit pouch. Not this time, he muttered. I'm not leaving it buried. He turned toward the ladder, but a surge of water slammed into his legs. The vault shuddered, releasing a hiss of compressed gas. He stumbled, coughing as the air turned acidic. The flashlight slipped, spinning away into the dark. Raya, he shouted. Raya! Her bark answered urgent, closer now. She had ignored his order, descended halfway down the ladder. Lucas grabbed the rungs, climbing fast as the chamber below filled with a choking fog. He reached up, grasping for her collar. Up, girl, go! They burst through the hatch together, slamming it shut. The metal glowed faintly red beneath their feet, vibrating like a live wire. Lucas leaned against the wall, gasping. Raya pressed her head into his shoulder, trembling. The radio on the table came alive again, static. Then a voice he didn't recognize. Vance, this is Triton Control. You've entered restricted coordinates. Cease all transmission and vacate. This is your only warning. He stared at it, disbelief twisting into anger. You knew, he whispered. You knew this was here. Raya's growl deepened, eyes fixed on the window. Headlights flickered down the cliff road, two vehicles crawling through the storm. They're coming, he muttered. He stuffed the wet notes into a dry pouch, grabbed his rifle, and killed the lanterns. The interior plunged into shadow. The only light came from the faint red glow under the hatch. Raya's tail stiffened. She moved to the door, body low. Lucas checked his weapon, his pulse sinking with the thunder outside. They're not taking this place, he said. Not again. A flash of lightning split the sky, revealing figures stepping out of the trucks, men in reflective coats, too clean for the storm, carrying rifles wrapped in oilcloth. The first bullet shattered the lighthouse window. Glass rained across the floor. Raya barked, charging forward. Lucas returned fire, the muzzle flash lighting the stairwell. Hold the line, he yelled over the wind. The attackers advanced, their shots muffled by the roar of the sea. One round hit the door, splintering wood. Another tore through the radio, cutting off the voice mid-command. Sparks lit the room briefly before dying. Smoke filled the air, mixing with the salty damp. Lucas dragged a crate to the window and crouched behind it, reloading. Raya was beside him, panting hard, eyes locked on the flicker of headlights below. He caught his reflection, in the cracked glass mud, blood, exhaustion, and behind it, the faint red blink from the hatch below, still pulsing through the floor. 3 short, 2 long. The code repeated, steady as a heartbeat. Lucas gritted his teeth. You wanted it hidden, he whispered. Guess the tides changed. Outside, thunder rolled again, only this time, it wasn't thunder. It was another explosion, farther down the ridge, followed by the unmistakable drone of a helicopter sweeping in low from the sea. Raya barked once, loud and sharp. Lucas rose, shoulders squared. The storm screamed through the broken glass, drowning everything else. And for the first time since the war, Lucas Vance didn't feel lost. He felt ready. Whatever waited beneath the waves, whatever secret the world had buried, he and Raya were done running from it. They were going to drag it into the light. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it began. Silence pressed against the walls, thick, electric, wrong. Lucas crouched behind the overturned crate, listening. Only the storm answered. Outside, wind whipped the waves into white chaos. But through the noise came another sound, a hum, low, pulsing, rhythmic. Raya's ears twitched. She turned toward the floor. The hum was coming from beneath them. Lucas switched off his rifle's light, crouched near the hatch, and placed his gloved palm against the metal. The vibration was faint but steady, repeating in bursts, 3 short, 2 long, a signal, but not Morse through radio waves. This was frequency transmitted through solid steel. He remembered a term from his service days, ground-borne resonance. Old Cold War tech used to send coded messages through the earth when radios couldn't, but this was stronger, almost alive. Raya whined softly. "Yeah, I hear it too," Lucas murmured. The generator lights flickered once, then went dark again. For a moment, the lighthouse became a shadow against lightning, every beam and bolt illuminated by flashes from the storm. Lucas caught movement near the cliffs, 2 men retreating to their trucks, headlights cutting through rain. They weren't trying to breach anymore. They were waiting. He exhaled slowly. Tactical withdrawal. They want me boxed in. He checked his rifle. 1 magazine half spent. Another full. Not enough for a siege. Then the radio, dead minutes ago, crackled back to life, soft, static. Then a voice warped by distortion. "Vance, if you can hear this, follow the sound." Lucas froze. The voice wasn't Triton control. It was male, mid-40 rough, but familiar, the kind of tone burned into his memory from deployments. "You left us behind," it said. "Now listen close. It's not over." The transmission cut with a high-frequency squeal. Raya barked, backing away from the hatch, tail rigid. Lucas stood, heart hammering. "You left us behind." His hand trembled slightly before he forced it still. He didn't believe in ghosts, but trauma had its own frequency, and tonight it was screaming through steel. He looked at the clock. 23:47. The storm's eye would hit in an hour after that. All outside comms would die for good. He needed proof. Something solid. Lucas pulled on his rain jacket and slung his rifle. "Come on, girl. We're going down to the base." Raya hesitated, then followed. Paused silent on the soaked stairs. Outside, wind whipped the waves into white chaos. But through the noise came another sound. A hum. Low. Pulsing. Rhythmic. Raya's ears twitched. She turned toward the floor. The hum was coming from beneath them. Lucas switched off his rifle's light, crouched near the hatch, and placed his gloved palm against the metal. The vibration was faint but steady, repeating in bursts, 3 short, 2 long, a signal, but not Morse through radio waves. This was frequency transmitted through solid steel. Beneath it, he saw concrete cracked, hollow sounding. He struck it once with the crowbar. The sound echoed not solid, but cavernous. A tunnel. He found an old access hatch, half buried under moss and gravel. Stamped across it, Naval Comm Relay Tide Project. Lightning flashed behind him, throwing the cliffs into stark relief. In that split second of light, he saw a shape on the far ridge, tall, human, motionless, watching. Then darkness again. He forced the hatch open. A gust of stale air rose from below. He shone the light down metal stairs spiraling into the rock. "Stay close," he whispered. They descended slowly, water dripping from pipes overhead. The tunnel floor leveled out into a corridor lined with rusted terminals and cables thick as tree roots. He passed a wall of dials, all dead except one. A single green indicator blinked faintly. The hum was louder here. The same rhythm. 3 short, 2 long. Lucas crouched, following the vibration to a console, half collapsed under debris. Its screen was black, but an analog gauge twitched every few seconds. He brushed away dust, revealing an engraving on the panel. Project Ghost Frequency. U.S. Naval Research 1989. He whispered the words aloud, disbelieving. Ghost Frequency. Raya paced behind him, restless, tail flicking. Lucas powered his portable scanner and placed it near the console. A burst of static filled his headset, then faint words broke through, buried under layers of distortion. Port Marin, test site, uncontained, contamination vector spreading through tide systems. Then another voice cut in, female, controlled, authoritative. Seal the frequency relay. No witnesses. Terminate tide personnel. Lucas yanked the headset off. His pulse roared in his ears. The female voice, he recognized it from the files he'd seen upstairs. Dr. Helena Ward, CEO of Triton Industries. She hadn't just inherited this mess, she'd created it. A sharp metallic click echoed down the tunnel. Raya snapped toward the sound, teeth bared. Footsteps. Lucas killed the flashlight and pressed his back against the wall. The tunnel filled with the faint halo of another beam, white, steady, moving carefully. 2 men in rain gear, rifles up, advancing. Mouthed, quiet. Raya crouched low, breathing slow. When the nearest man stepped past the console, Lucas moved. He grabbed the rifle barrel, shoved it up, and drove his shoulder into the man's chest. The gun went off, deafening in the confined space. The second man shouted, swinging his light, but Raya launched before he could aim. She hit his arm, teeth locking deep. The rifle clattered to the floor. Lucas pinned the first attacker, pressing the barrel to his throat. "Who sent you?" The man's eyes flicked toward the tunnel exit. "Ward cleanup, no witnesses." A burst of static erupted from both their radios. "Confirm elimination." Lucas didn't hesitate. He slammed the rifle butt against the man's head. The body went limp. Raya released her hold, panting hard. Blood smeared her muzzle. Lucas grabbed the second man's radio and clicked it twice. "Target neutralized," he said, mimicking the tone. Proceeding to secondary sweep. Static. Then, "Copy that. Burn the relay on your way out." "Oh." He pocketed the radio, heart pounding. "Not tonight," he muttered. He looked around the console room one last time. In the far corner, a small steel case sat half submerged in the water. Inside, through a cracked seal, he saw something glint, a memory card, old-style military issue. He grabbed it, sealed it in his pouch, and turned toward the stairs. "Let's move, girl." They climbed fast, the hum behind them rising to a shrill metallic pitch, like feedback through a broken speaker. As they reached the surface, the hatch slammed shut from the pressure of the storm, echoing like a closing tomb. Lucas stood in the rain, chest heaving, the card clutched tight in his glove. Raya leaned against his leg, trembling but steady. Below them, the hum faded, but not before one final sequence came through, barely audible under the thunder. 3 short, 2 long, then 1 word, stretched thin by interference. "Alive." Lucas stared at the lighthouse above, its dark glass eye facing the sea. Somewhere inside, something was still transmitting. And now, he had proof. The storm had turned the entire coast into a single sheet of white noise, wind, surf, and thunder, merging into one relentless roar. Lucas and Raya climbed the ridge behind the lighthouse, boots sliding on mud, the beam of his flashlight cutting through rain that felt like shards of glass. Below them, the tower stood half-lit from lightning strikes, its shattered windows flashing like the blink of a dying eye. Somewhere inside that lighthouse, machinery was still humming, still alive, still transmitting. But the message wasn't what terrified Lucas most, it was the fact that someone else was answering. He could see the glow of 2 trucks parked along the service road. One engine idled, lights dimmed to slits, the other was blacked out entirely. Lucas crouched behind a fallen cedar, raised his binoculars. 3 men in tactical gear moved between the vehicles, shoulders hunched against the rain. One carried a portable incinerator unit, industrial grade, meant for erasing evidence. "Cleanup," he muttered. "They're going to burn the site." Raya pressed against his leg, trembling but silent, her gaze fixed on the tree line above the trucks. Lucas followed it and saw a faint, shimmer infrared scope reflection. A 4th man, hidden overwatch. He weighed his options. He had maybe 5 rounds left, 2 grenades salvaged from his old duffel, and 1 shot at getting that data card to someone who could expose it. The nearest uplink point, Ridge B Relay, was 6 miles inland, across flooded ground. If he could reach it before dawn, the signal might punch through the storm. "Move quiet," he whispered. They started downslope. The mud sucked at their boots, each step a fight against gravity. Raya led the way, low and deliberate, weaving between boulders. Thunder masked their movement. When they reached the lower trail, Lucas spotted a drainage culvert leading under the road. He crawled through first, scraping elbows on rusted steel. Halfway through, headlights flared above them. Voices shouted, indistinct over the rain. "Perimeter secure. Burn charge set." Raya froze, ears flat. Lucas held her collar until the light passed, then emerged on the far side. The trucks were behind them now, the ridge ahead a dark rise smothered in fog. For 2 miles they climbed in silence. Every gust of wind carried the ocean's breath, cold and sharp. Lucas's mind replayed the radio voice. "You left us behind." Each repetition blended with the pulse still vibrating through the ground. He couldn't tell anymore which came from memory and which from the machine beneath the lighthouse. By the time they reached the first switchback, dawn had begun bleeding into the storm-gray light with no warmth. The relay tower stood ahead, half collapsed, its dish tilted toward the sea. A maintenance shack leaned beside it, door swinging in the wind. "Almost there," Lucas said, though his breath came ragged. Raya barked once, short and low, a warning. Lucas dropped to one knee, scanning the fog. A silhouette moved behind the shack. Then another. He counted 3. Same rain gear. Same rifles. They had beaten him here. He slid the memory card from his pouch, tucking it into the radio transmitter strapped to his vest. Even if he died, the data might still broadcast when the relay powered. He glanced at Raya. Guard mode. The dog's posture changed instantly, ears forward, tail stiff. Lucas pulled the first grenade pin with his teeth and rolled it across the mud. It hissed once before erupting into a flash of light and sound that drowned even the thunder. He moved through the smoke, firing short bursts. 2 men went down. The third ducked behind the shack, returning fire. Bullets sparked off the dish frame. Raya sprinted wide, circling through the fog. Lucas reloaded, waited for the rhythm of the gunfire, then broke cover. The attacker turned just in time to see motion in the mist, Raya leaping, jaws clamping onto his forearm. The rifle went flying. Lucas closed the distance, driving a punch into the man's throat. The fight ended in seconds. When the echo faded, only rain remained. Lucas knelt beside the control panel at the relay base. The terminal was ancient but still had power. He plugged in his transmitter, adjusted the frequency, and keyed the switch. Static roared through the headset, then steadied into a tone. Uplink established. Come on," he whispered. A voice cut through the static, female this time, urgent but unfamiliar. Receiving weak signal, identify. Lucas Vance, Former Naval Operations. Sending evidence on Project Tide. The line sputtered. Signal unstable. Repeat. Before he could answer, the world flashed white. A detonation ripped through the ridge. The shockwave threw him sideways, slamming him into the ground. He tasted blood. The lighthouse miles behind was engulfed in fire. A pillar of flame punched into the sky, then folded inward as if swallowed by the sea. "They blew it," he gasped. The transmission whined, flickered, then cut out entirely. The relay dish groaned, metal bending. Sparks showered from the control box. Raya limped to his side, fur singed, eyes wide. Lucas forced himself up. "We're not done. If they think they buried it, we dig it out." Down the valley, engines roared, new vehicles climbing fast. He could see their headlights snaking up through fog. Triton's reinforcements. Lucas slung his pack, pressed a hand to Raya's neck. "We head for Ridge B's lower tunnels. There's another exit near the harbor. We move now." "Oh?" Raya barked once ready. They vanished into the trees just as the first convoy reached the ridge. Gunfire cracked behind them, bullets tearing through branches. Lucas didn't look back. The path ahead descended toward the coast, toward the truth still pulsing beneath the sea. As they ran, the ground trembled again, 3 short, 2 long, like the heartbeat of something vast awakening under the waves. Lucas glanced toward the horizon, breath fogging in the cold. "You wanted your signal, Ward," he said. "You just lit it for the whole damn world." Raya barked into the wind, the sound swallowed by thunder. Together they disappeared into the storm, racing toward whatever waited beyond Ridge B, toward the final reckoning. They reached the old supply tunnels just as the last of the daylight died. The air inside was damp, metallic, thick with the smell of salt and engine oil. Rusted pipes lined the ceiling like veins, dripping seawater in a slow, uneven rhythm. Raya padded ahead, her claws clicking on the concrete, each sound echoing down the dark corridor. Lucas's flashlight flickered, throwing fragments of light across faded stencils on the walls. Naval Command, Ridge B Operations. The lettering was almost gone, but the insignia beneath it, a trident encircled by 3 waves, was unmistakable. He had worn that patch once. They weren't just under the coast. They were walking inside the skeleton of his own past. At the first junction, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber, filled with abandoned equipment. Radio consoles, power relays, and metal crates marked property of USNRD. Dust coated everything. Yet something still worked. A small terminal near the far wall blinked green. Raya froze, ears twitching. Lucas approached slowly, brushing grime from the screen. It came to life with a distorted login prompt. Then, without his touch, began typing on its own. User, Tide 3. Access granted. Lines of text scrolled across the screen. Then a voice, digital, fractured, but human, filtered through the old speaker. "This is Commander Elias Ward, Naval Research Division. If you're reading this, then the containment failed." Lucas stiffened. Ward. The same surname as Triton's CEO, Dr. Helena Ward. The recording continued, voice steady but haunted. Project Tide was never about sonar mapping. It was about biological weaponization through aquatic dispersal. We were ordered to test it offshore. The compound mutated. We lost men, good men. They told us to seal it, to bury it. They said no one would ever find this place. The screen glitched, cutting to static. Raya whined softly. Lucas pressed the replay key, but the command didn't respond. Instead, a new window opened, automatically security footage. On the grainy screen, 5 divers moved through a flooded chamber. One of them, tall, dark suit, turned toward the camera. The patch on his shoulder read Vance. Lucas's breath caught. He remembered the mission, the collapse, the pressure failure. He remembered the command to withdraw and the voice on the radio that had overridden it. Seal the vault, contain the breach. He had obeyed. They hadn't made it out. He whispered, "God forgive me." Him. Behind him, the tunnel lights flared once, then snapped dark again. Somewhere deeper inside, a mechanical clank echoed, followed by a hiss of air. Doors opening. Raya growled, low and steady. Lucas slung his rifle and turned toward the sound. "Not ghosts," he muttered. "Cleanup crew." A spotlight cut through the dark ahead, sweeping the corridor. Voices followed, 3, maybe 4 men, their movements precise, tactical. He ducked behind a crate, pulling Rhea down beside him. Rainwater dripped from the ceiling, masking faint footsteps. "Search every wing," a voice ordered. Female, this time cold, clipped, commanding. Dr. Helena Ward. Lucas's grip tightened on the rifle. So she'd come in person. "Ma'am, relay's destroyed," one of the men said. "He might have transmitted partial data." "Then find him," Ward replied, "and burn everything else." Her voice carried through the tunnel, calm as a surgeon's blade. Lucas's jaw clenched. He reached into his vest and pulled out the flash drive, the one he'd taken from the vault. The metal was warm against his palm, faintly pulsing with the same frequency rhythm he'd heard all night. 3 short, 2 long, he whispered. "You're still with me, boys." Then he set the drive inside an empty radio console and rewired the power line. The ancient capacitor hummed faintly. When the frequency hit a steady tone, the screen blinked to life, transmitting autonomously through emergency relays still buried in the mountain. Ward's team drew closer. Raya crouched low, muscles coiled. Lucas took one last look at the console, then at the dog beside him. "If I don't make it out, you run. Got it?" Raya's only answer was a quiet, guttural growl. Boots splashed around the corner. Flashlights swept across the chamber. Lucas opened fire. The echoes thundered through the metal like cannon blasts. 2 men dropped instantly. Another fell back shouting. Sparks rained from ricochets. Ward shouted orders, retreating behind the bulkhead. "Seal it! Seal the corridor!" Lucas grabbed the console cable and ripped it free just as the blast door slammed shut between them. The transmission light stayed on, steady, strong. He smiled faintly through the smoke. Too late. Raya barked once, triumphant. From behind the sealed door came Ward's voice, sharp and furious. "You think you've won? The tide always comes back." Lucas wiped grime from his face, staring at the glowing console. "So does the truth." He turned toward the escape shaft that slanted upward toward the cliffs. Rainwater dripped through the cracks above, carrying the sound of distant thunder, and somewhere beyond it, helicopter rotors approaching. "Time to finish this," he said. Raya barked again and bounded ahead into the rising wind. Together, they climbed toward the surface, toward the storm, toward the light, toward the ghosts that were finally answering back. The storm was waiting for them. By the time Lucas and Raya emerged from the shaft, night had thickened into a wall of black rain. The lighthouse below was gone, a crater of flame where stone and sea had collided. Smoke rolled across the cliffs like a living thing. The air reeked of salt, diesel, and ash. Lucas wiped the grit from his eyes. His body ached, lungs burning from the climb. Above the roar of wind came a new sound, the heavy, rhythmic chop of helicopter blades. Lights swept across the ridge. "They're not done yet," he muttered. Raya pressed close to his leg, fur slicked flat with rain. She growled softly, eyes locked on the flickering horizon, where a black silhouette descended Triton's private gunship. Lucas ducked behind a half-collapsed bunker, dragging Rhea with him. Inside, the air was cold and damp, walls covered in peeling paint and forgotten maps. He flicked his flashlight once enough to reveal an old radio mast still bolted to the ceiling. A plan formed fast, the kind that came from habit and instinct. Stay low, draw them in, make it count. He checked his rifle 3 rounds, 1 grenade left, knife on the belt, nothing more. Outside, the chopper's spotlight cut through the storm, slicing the night into violent white flashes. Over the roar came a voice on a loudspeaker. "Lucas Vance, you have something that doesn't belong to you. Step out now, and you might live through this." Lucas almost laughed. "You said that 10 years ago," he whispered. Raya's ears twitched. She was trembling, not from fear, but from tension. The helicopter circled closer. Through the bunker's broken window, Lucas caught sight of figures advancing up the ridge, Ward's men in dark tactical suits, moving in formation. 4 on the left, 2 on the right, 1 rear sniper, efficient, professional. He crawled to the rear wall, pried open a rusted crate, and found what he'd hoped for: signal flares. Most were corroded, but one looked usable. He twisted the cap, the phosphorus tip sparking weakly to life. Raya followed his gaze as he pointed toward the far cliff. "We'll give them what they want." He attached the flash drive, the one holding the data, to the flare casing and jammed it into a metal pipe aimed out toward the sea. If the storm's wind carried it right, the current would drag the evidence to the next coast before dawn. "Transmit this, you bastard," he muttered, lighting the fuse. The flare shot into the air with a hiss, streaking red across the black sky. The helicopter swung instantly, searchlight tracking it. "Got your attention," Lucas said. He fired his last grenade into the mud between the advancing men. The explosion threw up a wall of dirt and smoke. Raya bolted left, weaving between cover as Lucas sprinted right, rifle raised. He took one down with a clean burst, another with a knife strike that felt almost mechanical, no thought, just movement. The air filled with shouting, gunfire, rain. Sparks erupted from the cliffside as bullets hit stone. Then, through the chaos, a voice calm, unshaken, cut across the radio frequency. "You always had a hero complex, Vance. Dr. Helena Ward." Lucas ducked behind a steel drum. "And you always had a god complex. You think that data saves anyone? You think the truth matters to people who drink the poison willingly? You'd be surprised," he said. A sudden howl of wind tore through the ridge, and lightning struck the nearby mast. The flash blinded him for a second, then the shockwave hurled debris across the bunker. When he regained focus, the helicopter was landing, blades chopping furiously against the storm. Ward stepped out, her long coat whipping around her legs, a pistol glinting in her hand. Raya barked once, sharp and furious. Ward aimed at the sound. "Still got your mud, I see. Loyal. Shame that always ends the same way." Lucas stepped out from behind cover. "Maybe for your kind." Their eyes met through the rain, hers calm and cold, his burning with exhaustion and purpose. She fired first. He dove behind a rock, returning 2 shots. One grazed her shoulder. She barely flinched. "Give me the drive," she shouted over the storm. "Already gone," he yelled back. Her expression faltered for the first time. Liar. Then came a new sound, the thump of distant rotors. Another helicopter, smaller, faster, approaching from the west. Its lights flashed blue-white. Ward's men hesitated. "Command! We've got inbound, unidentified." Lucas recognized the pattern of the lights. Federal. The flare had worked. He smiled. "Guess the tide changed." Ward's composure cracked. She turned, yelling into her comms, but the storm swallowed her words. Lucas took his chance. He sprinted forward as Raya charged from the side. The German shepherd leapt, slamming into Ward's arm just as she raised her pistol again. The gun went flying, skittering into the mud. Ward screamed, twisting, trying to free herself, but Raya held on, jaws locked. Lucas reached them, wrenching the weapon away. For a moment, lightning lit all 3: soldier, scientist, and the dog who refused to die. "Call them off," Lucas demanded. Ward's eyes were wild. "You can't stop this. It's already in the water." "I'm not stopping it," he said quietly. "I'm exposing it." Then the second helicopter's spotlight flooded the ridge. A voice boomed through the storm. "Federal enforcement, drop your weapons." Ward froze. Raya released her grip, panting hard, muzzle streaked with blood. Lucas stepped back, lowering his rifle. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The storm howled around them, wind tearing at their clothes, the ocean thrashing below. Then Ward tried to run. A single warning shot cracked through the air, followed by the dull thump of her body hitting the ground. Agents swarmed in, shouting orders. The helicopter hovered above like a white eye in the dark. Lucas dropped to one knee beside Raya, resting a hand on her neck. She was shaking, exhausted but alive. "It's over," he whispered. But as the storm began to fade, and dawn bled across the horizon, Lucas realized something deeper. This wasn't the end. It was only the moment before the world started listening. He looked toward the sea, where the flare's red trail had vanished into the waves, carrying the truth with it. And for the first time in years, the veteran let himself breathe. The night had been long, but the dawn finally was coming. Dawn arrived pale and trembling, the kind of light that didn't so much brighten the world as expose what survived the night. The ridge was a battlefield mud, churned with shell casings, smoke rising from the shattered bunker, and the broken shell of the lighthouse smoldering below like a dying heart. Lucas sat on the rocks, his breath slow but even, the rifle across his lap. Raya lay beside him, muzzle resting on his boot, eyes half closed but alert. Her fur was matted with rain and blood, but she was still breathing, still fighting. Helicopters hovered overhead, their blades beating a rhythm against the sea. Federal agents in black windbreakers swarmed across the cliffs, marking evidence, photographing bodies, securing Ward's men. The chaos felt distant, muffled. Lucas's focus was fixed on the horizon where the first clean line of sunrise cut through the storm clouds. A familiar voice broke through the static in his earpiece. "Lucas Vance, this is Agent Clara Reese, Federal Enforcement Division. We got your signal. You're a hard man to find." He exhaled slowly. "Did you get the file?" "We did. The transmission was partial, but it's enough. The contaminants, the cover-up, Ward's direct orders, all of it matches with the documents recovered from Triton's archives." Lucas let the words sink in. 10 years of silence, guilt, and ghosts, and now the truth had a pulse again. "Ward?" he asked. "In custody. She's hurt but alive. You'll get your chance to face her." "I don't need that," he said. "I just need to know it's over." "It's not over," Clara replied. "It's finally beginning." A beat of quiet passed before her tone softened. "You saved more lives than you know, Vance. And your dog. Tell me she's okay." Lucas smiled faintly. "She's a Marine. She'll walk it off." Raya's ear twitched at her name. She gave a weak, single bark, as if confirming the statement herself. When the first medics reached him, Lucas refused the stretcher. He stayed kneeling beside Raya while they patched her wound, murmuring softly the way soldiers do to one another in the aftermath, words that didn't matter, only tone. The kind of sound that says, "We made it." He remembered Afghanistan, sand instead of salt, heat instead of ice, and the same dog pulling him from the wreckage after a blast, the same breath, the same silence after the chaos. He opened the folder. Inside were photographs, satellite images, chemical charts, old Navy documents with Project Tide stamped across the top in red. On the last page was a photo of Henry Porter, smiling beside the original Lighthouse crew. Lucas traced a finger over the image. "He died trying to stop it. I just followed the signal." Clara took a sip of coffee. "Maybe. But you're the one who answered." Outside, seagulls screamed above the waves. For a moment, neither spoke. Every network in the country is about to see what Triton buried. Lucas's grip tightened on his rifle. Porter was right. He tried to warn everyone. They killed him for it. "Now they can't hide it anymore," Clara said. "You gave him justice." He looked down at Raya, her eyes half closed but peaceful. "We both did." The wind carried the faint smell of smoke and seaweed. Below, agents loaded equipment into trucks, their voices blending with the rhythmic wash of waves. For the first time in years, Lucas didn't feel like a soldier or a fugitive, just a man standing where his ghosts had run out of places to hide. Clara stood. "You'll need debriefing, medical, the whole bureaucracy, but after that, there's a place for you, if you want it. Environmental division. You've seen what corruption looks like in the dirt and the water. We could use that." Lucas shook his head. "Maybe later. Right now, I just need quiet." She smiled faintly. "Fair enough." And, as she walked away, he watched the agents lift Ward into the chopper. Her head was bandaged, her face expressionless. She met his gaze for only a second, cold, unreadable before the door shut and the rotor drowned her out. The storm was gone. Only rain-smoothed earth and a silence that felt earned remained. Lucas turned toward the sea. "We're done, girl," he said quietly. Raya's tail thumped once against the rock. He reached out and rested a hand on her neck. The warmth of her heartbeat pulsed beneath his fingers, steady, alive, real. For the first time in a decade, Lucas Vance let himself believe in morning. The ghosts were still there, but now they were quiet. The news broke 3 days later. By then, the ridge had been sealed off by federal tape, and the last of the storm's wreckage cleared. The ocean still smelled faintly of fuel, but the air was clean again, sharp, cold, untainted. Every network in the country is about to see what Triton buried. Lucas's grip tightened on his rifle. Porter was right. He tried to warn everyone. They killed him for it. Now they can't hide it anymore, Clara said. You gave him justice. He looked down at Raya, her eyes half closed but peaceful. We both did. The wind carried the faint smell of smoke and seaweed. Below, agents loaded equipment into trucks, their voices blending with the rhythmic wash of waves. For the first time in years, Lucas didn't feel like a soldier or a fugitive, just a man standing where his ghosts had run out of places to hide. Clara stood. You'll need debriefing, medical, the whole bureaucracy, but after that, there's a place for you, if you want it. Environmental division. You've seen what corruption looks like in the dirt and the water. We could use that. Lucas shook his head. Maybe later. Right now, I just need quiet. She smiled faintly. Fair enough. Agent Clara Reese stepped in, holding a file folder and 2 paper cups of coffee. Her hair was still damp from the mist. Morning, she said. Or what passes for it on this coast. Lucas nodded. You've been busy. You could say that. She handed him the file. Officially, Triton's finished. Ward's facing criminal charges, and the EPA's confirmed contamination across 4 coastal counties. The leak was real. Porter's notes matched everything. You gave them the proof they needed. And, as she walked away, he watched the agents lift Ward into the chopper. Her head was bandaged, her face expressionless. She met his gaze for only a second cold, unreadable before the door shut and the rotor drowned her out. The storm was gone. Only rain-smoothed earth and a silence that felt earned remained. Lucas turned toward the sea. We're done, girl, he said quietly. Raya's tail thumped once against the rock. He reached out and rested a hand on her neck. The world felt too quiet, like it hadn't yet realized what had changed. Ward? Lucas asked finally. Transferred to federal holding. She's not talking, but we found her personal notes. Turns out her brother, Commander Elias Ward, was one of the original naval scientists on Project Tide. He's the voice you heard in the bunker recording. She kept it hidden all these years. Lucas stared out the window. The sea was calm, deceptively peaceful. She tried to finish what he started. Now, on this ridge above the Pacific, that silence felt like closure. Agent Clara arrived by mid-morning. She stepped out of the chopper with her coat flapping in the wind, exhaustion lining her face. She crouched beside him, glancing at the burned horizon. Hell of a night, she said. Longest one of my life. She nodded toward the waves. We've confirmed your flare landed near Northport. Coast Guard found the casing with the drive still intact. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small flash drive, the one Lucas thought had been lost with the flare. Recovered from the surf near Northport. I thought you'd want it back. He took it carefully. The metal was corroded but intact. Guess it really made it. Clara straightened. We'll be filing our final report tonight. The Bureau wants a statement from both of you, technically. Something simple, something the public can understand. Truth doesn't need polishing, Lucas said. Just ears willing to hear it. She smiled. Then maybe record it your way. After she left, Lucas sat in silence for a long time, the flash drive warm in his palm. Outside, the ocean rolled slow and steady. Somewhere below the surface, the wreck of the lighthouse still lay half swallowed by the tide, its beacon extinguished but its message carried on. He powered up the outpost's old ham radio, its console humming faintly. The transmission frequency from that night was still saved in memory. 321A. The ghost frequency. He pressed the mic button. This is Lucas Vance, former Naval Operations, broadcasting final report on Project Tide. Static crackled, then cleared. His voice filled the room low, steady, deliberate. 10 years ago, I followed orders that buried men and truth alike. Tonight, I'm correcting that. What we built under the name of protection became poison. What we tried to hide took more lives than any war I fought. But the tide always returns, and with it, the truth. Raya raised her head, ears perked. The radio light pulsed in rhythm with his words. He continued, To anyone listening, don't wait for storms to wash secrets clean. Speak before the sea does it for you. He released the mic. The message repeated, cycling through open frequencies until it vanished into the static of the world. Lucas leaned back, the weight in his chest easing for the first time in years. Raya climbed onto the bench beside him, resting her head against his shoulder. Outside, the last remnants of the storm drifted toward the horizon, clouds breaking apart into soft, glowing fragments. The lighthouse ruins caught the first touch of sunrise, its twisted metal shining like glass. Lucas whispered, "We did what we came here to do." Raya gave a soft, contented huff. The radio light blinked once more, 3 short, 2 long, and then went dark. Lucas smiled. Message received. He shut off the console, opened the window, and let the morning air fill the room. The wind carried the faint scent of salt and pine, fresh and alive. The ghosts were gone. Man and dog sat together, watching the dawn rise over the sea. The world was finally listening. By late spring, the Oregon coast had shed its scars. The charred cliffs had grown wild again with saltgrass and yellow daisies, and the sea, ever patient, ever merciless, had reclaimed the broken stones of the old lighthouse. Only a fragment of its foundation remained, half buried and blackened, standing like a gravestone between the sky and the tide. Lucas rebuilt on higher ground. A modest cabin, wood, stone, and quiet. No electricity, just a small stove, a window facing the water, and a radio that mostly stayed silent. He left the walls bare except for one photo. Henry Porter, smiling beside the lighthouse crew, the caption faded but legible, "Truth survives the storm." Every morning, Lucas walked the ridge trail, with Raya trotting at his side. She'd healed almost completely, only a faint scar traced her ribs where the bullet had grazed her. In the sunlight, her coat shimmered gold and silver, like living memory. She still listened to the wind, the way soldiers listen to silence, reading it, judging it, ready to move before it turned dangerous. Sometimes Lucas caught her staring out toward the sea, ears flicking to an invisible sound, and he would smile. "You still hear them, don't you?" he'd say. "The ghosts in the waves." He didn't mean it as a joke. At night, when the fog rolled in and the air tasted like rain, he'd sit by the window with a mug of black coffee and the old ham radio on the table. The frequency dial still bore faint marks from the night of the transmission 321A. He kept it there, untouched, like a memorial. Occasionally, static would drift through the speaker, soft, rhythmic, almost familiar. 3 short, 2 long, then silence. Raya would lift her head, alert, then relax when nothing followed. "Yeah," Lucas would whisper, "I hear it too." He'd never tell anyone about those moments. Some things didn't need witnesses. The world beyond the ridge had already moved on. News cycles turned. Politicians swore reforms. The story of the lighthouse veteran ran for a week, maybe 2, before fading into the background noise of other crises. That was fine. He hadn't done it for headlines. He'd done it so men like Porter and the ones who never made it out of the deep wouldn't be erased again. He'd learned something in those long years between wars. Redemption doesn't arrive like thunder. It seeps in quietly, one decision at a time. Raya taught him that. Loyalty doesn't need glory. It only needs purpose. One evening, as the sun slipped into the horizon, Lucas carved a wooden sign and nailed it above the cabin door. The letters were uneven, burned with the tip of his knife. He barked for the truth. When the wind blew, the wood creaked softly, like it was whispering those words back to the ocean. The following week, a young journalist from Portland hiked up the ridge. She introduced herself politely, notebook trembling in her hands. "Mr. Vance," she said, "people want to know after everything you uncovered. Why stay here? Why not go back to the world?" Lucas smiled, looking past her to the horizon. "Because this is the world," he said. "It just doesn't lie to you." The journalist paused, unsure how to reply. Then her gaze fell on Raya, sitting by the porch steps, tail sweeping the dust. "And her?" she asked softly. Lucas looked down at his partner. "She's the better half of the story." That night, after the journalist left, Lucas built a small fire outside the cabin. Raya lay close by, eyes half closed, chin resting on her paws. The flames flickered gold on her fur. Above them, the stars appeared one by one, silent witnesses to a war that had finally ended without medals or fanfare. Lucas raised his mug toward the sea. "To the ones who didn't make it back, you're home now." Raya gave a soft huff, tail tapping twice. The radio inside the cabin crackled faintly, 3 short, 2 long, then faded into steady white noise. Lucas didn't move to turn it off. He just listened. And for the first time in years, The sound didn't feel like ghosts calling him back. It felt like the ocean saying thank you. As dawn rose again over the Pacific, Lucas Vance and his loyal dog stood at the edge of the ridge, the wind tugging at their coats. The light touched them both, the living and the loyal, and carried their story into another quiet day. The war was over, but the truth, like the tide, would always return.